this guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Recommending candidates for the board of CBC as well. Did you recommend the appointment of Mr. Harley Finkelstein?
Yes.
Okay. Were any of your children employed by Mr. Finkelstein's company at the time when you recommended the appointment?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that seem like a problem to you?
Mr. Finkelstein is one of Canada's greatest entrepreneurs.
He might be a great guy, sir. I've never met him, but the point is, your members of your immediate family were employed by him, and you used a position in government to recommend him for a position at the same time as members of your family were on the board, and you didn't recuse yourself from that discussion.
Our family was not on the board of Shopify.
No, but they were employees of his company.
Employees, yes.
Yes, okay.
But not on the board, as you
right,
stated.
right. You recommended him to the board while members of your family were his employees. That's on the record, and people can now make their judgments. Sir, you were a journalist until 2017. Is that correct?
I didn't recommend him to the board. Which board are you talking about?
Okay, I think we're past this now, and I have limited time. You testified that you recommended him to be on the board of CBC. Now, you were a journalist until 2017. Is that correct?
Point of order, Chair. Can I have point of order?
He was on a list of names.
Point of order.
Excuse me, point of order. Go ahead, please, on the point of order.
I want to ask about relevance. Relevance in terms of where Mr. Jennis is going with this has nothing to do with anything with regards to the residents in New York City. This is asking the Consul General about past matters in his life and in past roles. This has absolutely nothing to do with the topic at hand here at this committee. And I know Mr. Jennis likes to go down these paths and become like some sort of spy detective, but let's get serious here. There's no relevance here, Garnett.
Okay, Mr. Sabera, we always allow
Can I just comment on this point of order, Chair?
I think we'd like to just get to our time. Mr. Sabera, it's not a point of order, but go ahead, Mr. Genuis.
Well, just on the point of order, I think there are a lot of questions today about Mr. Clark's credibility and his close connections with the government. The fact that Minister Joly appointed him twice and that he was able to recommend people with whom he had close connections when he was in one of those positions. And now he's in this new appointed position. He's living in this. He's receiving the benefits associated with this $9 million residence. I think these things are very much relevant to the questions of credibility that are involved. But I have a minute and a half left. Is that right?
1 minute.
Sorry, I'm commenting on the point of order, though. This wasn't part of my time, or.
Yes, it was.
Cutting into my time.
Okay, Chair. I don't think that was clear. Very quickly, you were a journalist until 2017. During the 2011 election campaign, a member of your family had a senior position within the Liberal National campaign. Did you disclose that at the time?
Disclosed to whom?
To the public.
It was not relevant.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'd like to now move a motion. The motion is that Minister Joly be asked to appear before the committee before the Thanksgiving break to answer questions about actions, policies, and plans related to GAC's real property portfolio in other countries and any other issues related to the committee's mandate, and further that the committee invite Emily Nicholson to appear. Having gotten that motion moved in the time, I'll now speak to it.
Thanks. Let me interrupt briefly. Have you sent that copy to the clerk?
Yes, the clerk has it, I believe,
we
in
will
both
distribute it out.
both official languages.
Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just to put a cap on the discussion we've had so far that leads into why I think this motion is important. Mr. Clark has talked about the benefits of public service, and I would in principle agree about the importance of public service. Having gotten that motion moved in the time, I'll now speak to it.
Thanks. Let me interrupt briefly. Have you sent that copy to the clerk?
Yes, the clerk has it, I believe,
we
in
will
both
distribute it out.
both official languages.
Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just to put a cap on the discussion we've had so far that leads into why I think this motion is important. Mr. Clark has talked about the benefits of public service, and I would in principle agree about the importance of public service. But if you look at the facts here, Mr. Clark has been appointed twice to important positions by Minister Joly. In the first case, he was in a position to recommend for an appointment someone whose companies employed at least one member of his family. In another case, he was able to have the benefits of this purchase of a $9 million condo on Billionaire Row. When he was a national journalist, a member of his immediate family was simultaneously in a senior important member of the Liberal campaign. He's professed his nonpartisanship, but we do see that a member of his immediate family had a senior role in the Liberal campaign in 2011. And that would seem to at least be something that would have been of interest to the public. So these are things, benefits, opportunities that are not normally associated with public service. Mr. Chair, we have identified the fact that not once but twice Mr. Clark received appointments from Minister Joly in different portfolios. And the government has made various claims about the purchase of this property that are highly suspect, about who was involved, who wasn't involved. And the buck has to stop somewhere. We think the buck has to stop with the minister, which is why we are proposing that Minister Joly appear before the committee to answer questions about this issue. Moreover, Chair, I want to point out that Minister Joly is, of course, a prominent member of the government. And I'm sorry, I think Mr. Hardy was maybe trying to do a point of order. It probably isn't one, but I'm not sure if you... No, he's...
Continue.
He thought better of it? Okay, I'll continue, Chair.
No, I haven't. No, it is a point of order. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, we could not hear you, Mr. Hardy. Go ahead, please. In your
I'm
point of
sorry.
order.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to check on timing here. I don't know how long this committee meeting is supposed to go. I was asked to appear for 2 hours. The 2 hours is up.
Sorry to interrupt your holiday, Ken. This isn't a point of order.
Gentlemen and ladies.
No.
Lady,
but
sorry.
If we've gone beyond our
Ladies,
time,
continue,
do we not
Mr.
need
Hardy.
unanimous? Do we not need unanimous agreement to go past the stated time of adjournment?
No.
Okay.
Continue, Mr. Generous.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I was in the process of pointing this much out. Minister Joly is a prominent member of the government, and her name has come up on a number of occasions at this committee before. Right now, we're looking at these questions of property investments, the $9 million purchase on Billionaire's Row in New York. Fairly recently, this committee was investigating the fact that an internal audit at Global Affairs revealed that 1/4 of contracts broke the rules. Imagine that, 1/4 of contracts at Minister Joly's department broke the rules. And having served on the Foreign Affairs Committee, having been the vice chair of that committee for some time before joining OGGO, I can share with members here that Minister Joly is not one of those ministers who makes herself available to parliamentary committees very often. At Foreign Affairs Committee, it was a major struggle to get her to appear on things, and we went long periods of time without hearing from ministers. Some ministers, ostensibly lower profile ministers in the government, would appear fairly often to respond to studies, to address the estimates, as is the normal practice of committee. But Minister Joly has done everything she can to avoid answering questions from parliamentarians at committees and to limit the length of those appearances. And I suspect we'll see, as a result of whatever assessments of the impact of her appearing before committee, we'll see members of the government, again, reluctant to allow the invitation to be extended to Minister Joly to appear before OGGO. But, I think a senior member of the government, somebody floated as a prospective future leadership candidate, but in any event, as a senior member of the government with an important portfolio, she should be ready, willing, and able to answer questions from committees from time to time, both at Foreign Affairs and at the Government Operations Committee. So we have these issues about the property portfolio. We had previously tried to get Minister Joly to appear on this internal audit revealing 1/4 of contracts breaking rules at her department. And so there are a number of issues relevant to this committee's mandate where I think we would benefit from being able to ask Minister Joly questions. And somebody who is operating at that senior level should be prepared to take questions from parliamentarians. We should extend the invitation, and I hope that she will respond to that invitation. Very briefly, I'll just add, Chair, that we did put into this motion Ms. Nicholson, who was involved in the infamous email that suggests Mr. Clark's potential role in the purchase. This clearly is a matter of dispute. He gave testimony about not being involved. I think it would be worthwhile to have Ms. Nicholson come before the committee and be able to address what Mr. Clark has said and to help the committee shed some light on this important question. I'll leave my comments there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. I have a speaking order of Mr. Joly.
Mr. Chair, can I make a point of order?
Oh, yeah. Give me 2 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this point of order just relates to the admissibility of the motion. So the committee has considered a motion and carried it unanimously to invite Emily Nicholson to appear. And my question through you to the clerk is whether, if the current motion is defeated, whether that would reverse the committee's earlier decision and whether we can essentially reconsider a decision that's been made earlier in this same meeting.
Sorry, Chair. Just on a point of order, Mr. Bachrach's point is well taken. I think it would be maybe more appropriate to deem the last few words not part of the motion anymore, in light of the decision the committee has already made. Now, if the committee were to support this, it would simply reaffirm a decision we've already been made. So I don't actually think it's inadmissible, and I don't think it's a big deal. But it also doesn't need to be in there.
Thanks, Mr. Bachrach, for bringing that up. It is a very good point. We can proceed with either just an agreement among ourselves, just delete that part, because the committee has agreed to have Ms. Nicholson appear. Yes. Barring that, we can just do it through an amendment, but I hope we can just agree. Delete that final part regarding Ms. Nicholson. Thanks. We have Mr. Thank you again for bringing that up. I have Mr. Joly, then Mr. Barrett. Go ahead, Mr. Joly.
Our understanding and agreement for the scope of this study was we'll look at all the evidence. We'll make a decision whether we want Mr. Clark to come or the minister to come. We agreed that we want Mr. Clark to come. Mr. Clark came, was quite clear he doesn't have anything to do with it. And all indications are the minister hasn't had anything to do with it as well. If you're trying to go after a witch hunt and trying to go back and say how did the appointment went and all of those things, that's not what I'm interested. If that's the path that we're going on, I'll be voting against. And I don't see any reason whatsoever we should have the minister come as it relates to the acquisition and disposition of this property.
Mr. Barrett, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief, Chair. I'll speak to some of the concerns raised by Liberal members. They're saying that the minister hasn't had anything to do with it. Well, it was the testimony of officials that the minister's chief of staff, in fact, was part of the decision tree, part of the conversation. We've heard over and over again from Liberals that they don't send political exempt staff to committee and they send the minister instead. So if Liberal members are suggesting that the minister's chief come to appear in her place and then the committee then make a decision on whether or not the minister should come after hearing from her chief, I guess we can have that conversation, but I'm doubtful that that's the case. The minister is responsible for what happens in her department, or she ought to be. Mr. Sorbera took issue with Mr. Genes's asking questions about Mr. Clark's record as a government appointee. I mean, the lack of curiosity, or more like a willful blindness by folks, I'll say opportunists like Mr. Sorbera, doesn't do Canadians any justice.
Point of order, Chair. We're not here to degrade or go at our
Mr.
members
Sorbera,
about
on your point of order.
MP Barrett, we're all representatives for our constituents. You don't need to use that type of language to degrade other MPs. Whether it's a point of order or not, you don't need to go down that path, Michael. Come on. You're better than that, I would hope.
Thank you, Mr. Sorbera.
Please.
Mr. Barrett.
Seriously.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Sorbera. Mr. Barrett, go ahead, please.
Well, if we're invoking first names, Francesco, your lack of curiosity or willful blindness does absolutely nothing to serve the Canadian people. And your interruption of Mr. Genes because you were simply upset that he was asking tough questions about someone who had been appointed by your government, sir, a corrupt government, and that appointee, Mr. Clark, did recommend the head of the company that his children worked for an appointment. That's a blatant conflict of interest. It's very relevant when we have Mr. Clark saying things here. Mr. Johari had said that, Mr. Clark said that he didn't have anything to do with it, and therefore we have to take his word for it. We have officials from your government who in writing said that, in fact, Mr. Clark was part of it. So who's lying? The government officials or the government appointees, or both? And the integrity of the appointments that your government is making, that Minister Joly is making, she appointed someone who was saying that they were an impartial broadcaster. Meanwhile, during an election, federal elections, one of their children held a senior role with a political party in Canada, with the Liberal Party in Canada. Credibility, integrity, conflicts of interest. Now, these things are very foreign concepts, staying clear of conflicts of interest. We've seen Justin Trudeau twice found guilty of breaking ethics laws. A cabinet of serial ethical lawbreakers. We're going to keep asking tough questions, even if you say our first names and ask us and beg us not to. This isn't about who you know, which unfortunately is how Mr. Clark got that appointment and that $40,000 a month rent subsidy while Canadians are literally freezing in the dark and starving. So the minister is responsible for taking the decision. If she chose to delegate authority, she's ultimately responsible for that. But her chief of staff, we heard from the department officials. The chief of staff was involved in the conversations. So is the proposal to have the chief come? I don't think it is. But we're past that. We want to hear from the minister. And again, to Mr. Genes's point, if history has been any indicator, we're going to get a full court press from the Liberals to protect the minister from having to be accountable to Canadians. That is certainly not the responsibility of members to protect ministers. So let's get the minister to come to committee, answer questions about this. It's an unacceptable purchase. Mr. Clark's answers today were not credible. And I think some of what we heard about his failure to recuse himself from decisions that he ought to have recused himself from in the past tell quite a tale. And the Liberals' strong protest of the examination of those facts is very, very telling. It's important that the minister comes to testify.
Thanks. I have Mr. Brock, then Mr. Genuis.
Thank you, Chair. And I just I want to take the time, because I know media is watching and following this as they have throughout. I want to make a following statement to the media. I want to spell out the timeline of events here and why Minister Joly needs to testify at this committee. Tom Clark is appointed in February 2023. He then hosts the Prime Minister at the old condo on April 27, 2023. And he and Trudeau were driving around New York the next day, April the 28th. Global Affairs Canada said that new problems were identified with the residents in the spring and summer of 2023, right after Trudeau visits, and then steps were taken to buy Clark the $9 million condo on Billionaires Row. On the documents that we received that identified Tom Clark being instrumental in giving a green light in buying the $9 million condo, that particular email chain was from the minister's own department. It was sent on June the 17th of 2024. On July 12th of that same year, the story breaks regarding the purchase of the $9 million condo. The bogus correction saying Tom Clark was not involved on June the 25th was dated June the 25th, the very next day after this committee ordered the documents on Clark's involvement in buying the New York condo. This is precisely why the minister needs to testify. We have, on the one hand, documents that suggest very direct involvement in the purchase of the condominium, and then we have Mr. Clark's own version today, which is highly suspect. In fact, I would say it is extremely highly suspicious. And this is precisely why Minister Joly has many questions to answer, and her attendance is crucial. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Genuis.
Thank you, Chair, and I hope we'll get support for this motion. I just want to conclude by just responding to Mr. Jahari very specifically here, that we have put forward motions before to have ministers come, and we have not seen anywhere near the level of reluctance about inviting those ministers to appear. Notionally, a minister doesn't have to appear if they're invited, although we hope they would respond positively to that invitation. I think there are important questions to ask about this issue, as well as a number of other issues relating to the committee's mandate. And when other ministers have been mentioned as potentially people we want to have testify, there's been a much greater willingness to allow that testimony to occur. But somehow, for some reason, with Minister Joly, immediately the government members are jumping in to try to prevent this committee from issuing that invitation. And it's striking because we've got a person who is so prominent in the government, who is such a core part of the Trudeau government's decision-making process, and yet someone who Liberal MPs don't want to see in a position where they have to answer questions from the opposition. I think somebody who has a senior role in government, who is planning to contend for the most senior role in government, they should be prepared to answer questions from MPs about the things that happen at their department. And I think if you look at the record, the selective approach that Liberals take, for other ministers, sure, they can testify. But for Minister Joly, every time this has come up on different issues at OGGO and elsewhere, government members are eager to prevent her from being invited to testify in particular. And she has very rarely testified before parliamentary committees. She's never testified before this committee. Let's give her the chance. If the government has a good story to tell here, if they do, then let the minister tell that story. I think it's fair to the minister and it's fair to Canadians to issue that invitation for her to be able to respond to. Thank you.
Thanks. Seeing no one else, we will go to a vote on the motion. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Sorbara.
Mr. Sorbara has been replaced by Madam Salma Zahid.
Vote no. I'm voting no. I'm here. Voting
Sorry.
no. Voting no.
Mr. Baines.
That's Salma.
Mr. Baines, I did not hear you. No. Mr. Joly?
On the invitation of the minister, no.
Mr. Shahal?
No.
Mr. Hardy?
No.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Ms. Kuzi?
In favor.
Madame Vignola? Oui. And Mr. Backrack?
In favor.
5 against 5.
All are vote in favor of the motion.
Chair?
Carries.
Colleagues, the motion carries. It was before, to have the meeting before Thanksgiving break, so if you leave it with the clerk and I, we will figure out a date. Do you have something else, Mr. Generous, before we break?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got another motion to move, and the clerk has this one as well. The motion is as follows. That the committee report to the House its view that the government should not have purchased a $9 million luxury condo on Billionaires Row in New York, especially in light of the fact that they have not secured a buyer for the previous residence. Further, that the committee call on the government to begin the process of looking for more economical and less opulent alternatives for the Consul General. I think that's a fairly straightforward motion which expresses our conclusions as Conservatives about the government's decision to purchase this $9 million luxury condo. And my hope is that a majority of the committee will agree with this motion, and this committee will take that position as well. So I don't think it requires more explanation. In a way, I think the explanation has been the meetings that have taken place, but I'll read the motion one more time. I know it's going to be distributed, but I want to make sure members have it. That the committee report to the House its view that the government should not have purchased a $9 million luxury condo on Billionaires Row in New York, especially in light of the fact that they have not secured a buyer for the previous residence. Further, that the committee call on the government to begin the process of looking for more economical and less opulent alternatives for the Consul General, period.
I'm not even dealing with questions of whether it's right or wrong, but I think we need more information before we table a report.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So naturally, we oppose this, and I don't understand why we are jumping into a conclusion and recommending to the House of a decision that until 2 minutes ago we needed to have the minister to come in to get to. So I'm surprised, but not really. So having said that, our side will be voting no against that motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Joly. We have Mr. Generous.
Just very briefly, there is no contradiction whatsoever between saying that the minister should answer questions about this important matter related to her portfolio, and also saying that we have enough information now to come to the conclusion that this purchase should not have been made. Now, we're going to have a vote, and a majority of the committee will have its way, and if our view isn't reflective of the majority view, then so be it. But our view is that the minister should appear to give an account for what has happened, and also that we have enough information at this point to come to the conclusion that the purchase of this $9 million condo on Billionaires Row, as the motion says, especially when the original property hasn't been sold. I mean, we have this sort of phantom math being created that if the first property sells at asking price versus the actual price of the new property, well, right now we just own two Consul General's residences, and we have and we're paying the carrying costs of both for as long as we hold them both. So I think there's no contradiction there. And look, this committee will vote, and the public will draw their conclusions based on whether people vote in favor of or against our motion, saying that this purchase was not an appropriate decision.
Thanks, Mr. Joly.
Yeah,
This
I'm
is
not
Mc-
sure what the
sorry, and then-
implication. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure what the implication of reneging on a commitment that has been made. Is there a penalty involved, and how much the penalty is, etc. But I think this is way premature to be able to make a decision or recommendation like that. So our position has not changed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't know what's going to happen through social media because we part of one party, a member of one party or another. Let's be adults and look at things in their entirety. I will not give in to threats, whether it's no matter how subtle the threat is, and I will not change my view, no matter what anyone says of me on social media.
See no one else on the speakers list, so we will go to a vote. Sir?
Mr. Dhaliwal,
You're muted, Mr. Dhaliwal.
No.
Ms. Zayed,
No.
Mr. Johari,
Oppose?
Mr. Shahal,
No.
Mr. Hardy,
No.
Mr. Brock,
Yes.
Mr. Jennings,
Yes.
Ms. Kuzi,
In favor.
Madame Vignola,
No.
Mr. Backrack.
No.
Okay, so yeas pour, 3, 3, and nays contre, 5, no, 7. Thanks.
Motion is defeated. Now, before we adjourn, colleagues, just very quickly, I'm sure you're all aware that our meetings are now switched to Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. for 2 hours. Thursday, September 19th, we are continuing from a motion passed June 12th with McKinsey. Tuesday, we had planned to do the Canada Post review. There's a kind of a hiccup there, but I will advise everyone later today or perhaps tomorrow. And the end of our Tuesday meeting is just to clear up, we had kind of that issue with the motion that was not very clear that got passed regarding Indigenous procurement. So I'm just going to, we'll spend hopefully about 15 minutes just to clear up that motion. Nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was short but good.